I asked a question this morning, are you worried about the rise of militant Islam in this country? Our phone lines have gone mad. This is on the back, obviously, of Suella Braverman writing her article, which many people agreed with. She said it's an unrecognisable country. We should be united in shared values and respectful of our differences. Meanwhile, Lee Anderson last night, a former deputy chairman of the Tory party, claimed the capital, this capital, London, had been taken over because of the weekly pro-Palestinian protests. He was responding to that article by Suella Braverman, and it's later now emerged that actually pro-Palestinian protesters had wanted to force Parliament into lockdown. This was during that vote when the Commons descended into abject chaos. This is the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, had wanted people to enter Parliament to lobby MPs to vote in favour of a ceasefire. Luckily, they were stopped by security. What is the Labour Party's position on this? Because I am very unclear, because Keir Starmer, Mr Flip-Flop, 5 different points of view on this, so he's not quite sure whether he wants a ceasefire or not. And actually, what happened in the House of Commons helped him, didn't it?
I think what happened in the House of Commons were just disgraceful scenes from all round. I think, you know, the idea that...
All round?
All round, because, like, the SNP bring a motion in purely to have politics with the Labour Party, because their motion...
Would Labour never do that?
No, because, well, yes, but it's irrelevant. They're not... Hamas and Benjamin Netanyahu are not going to suddenly say, oh, do you know what? Stephen Flynn has said we need to calm it down, lads. We'll put down our arms tomorrow. But I think, well, just to pick up something that you sort of skirted over a little bit of Lee Anderson's comments, I think his comments were absolutely disgraceful. He said that Sadiq Khan was controlled by Islamists in the UK. And
by
I think
his mates.
By his Islamist mates.
His Islamist mates, which I think is incredible.
I think it's more, it's not so much dog whistle as more brass band. I think you can make very valid criticisms of Sadiq Khan that he has allowed Islamist groups to control the streets of London and intimidate people. I'm Jewish. I have avoided central London for a lot of these protests going on. I do not like being around that. But I don't think it's accurate to say that Sadiq Khan is controlled by Islamists, and I think that's a very unhelpful trope to discussion, because you can have important discussions. There's important areas of criticism where we haven't got to grips with Islamism in this country. In 2014, David Cameron's government decided not to ban the Muslim Brotherhood in the United Kingdom. They are allowed to operate. Why is it that this group that is prescribed by a lot of our Sunni Arab allies, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt and Bahrain, and they are allowed to operate in this country? What is it that we think we know better than these countries?
So let me just ask you very quickly, politicians like Wes Streeting has come out, rather like you have, and condemned what has been said. How much of this, though, is because Labour is chasing that Muslim vote and is terrified of any criticism? I do think there's a major problem. People have been calling up about it, saying that at least you're the only station talking about this. So this is the feeling around the country.
I mean, on that note, we've got here from Mr Linton, Starmer is terrified that an all-Islam political party will be formed, which would immediately remove all of Labour's traditional Muslim votes. That's why he bowed to the threats and urged the Speaker to break, parliamentary rules. It was a sad day.
And on that
we don't
note,
know that's true.
Well,
don't know
what we do know is that they had a meeting. Starmer said he didn't pressure him. They definitely had a robust meeting. From what I've read this morning in the papers, there were various people lurking in the corridors, and that was then delayed. So that is a problem.
That is a problem. And look, I think that the primary problem is that Lindsay Hoyle himself, I think, behaved appallingly, actually broke parliamentary procedure in order to, we don't know if it was to appease the Labour Party. I suspect there was a bit of that. His excuse is that he was worried for many MPs' safety, that felt as though if they didn't vote for a ceasefire immediately, they would be unsafe. Now, even if, whether or not you believe Lindsay Hoyle or not, the fact that many members of Parliament feel unsafe if they do not vote for a ceasefire, I think is a problem in itself. And clearly, I mean, many talkTV callers are feeling this across the country. There is definitely a problem with this kind of radical branch of Islamism that, again, is not the majority. It's not the majority of people on the pro-Palestine marches. And I do think we have to be morally consistent here. Either we believe in free speech or we don't, or either we believe in the right to protest or we don't, and we cannot just allow people we agree with to protest.
What about projecting from the rivers to the sea on the Elizabeth Tower?
I think that's absolutely your right to freedom of expression. We cannot sit here.
That's allowed, is it?
It's against the law.
But I don't think it should. It's not technically against the law. 2016.
You're not allowed to project images onto the Houses of Parliament. It is against the law.
Okay, so I think that wasn't. So okay,
I think I recall I can't remember the exact lads mag, but there was an issue where a lads mag had projected
There was
certain images on Parliament.
Is that why it was made illegal?
It was my friend Gail Porter. In all her glory, let me tell you.
So why is Gail Porter not allowed, and is, sort of genocidal chants are?
Yes.
Well, look, I don't think that From the River to the Sea is necessarily a genocidal chant. Benjamin Netanyahu used it himself against the Palestinians. But look, whatever your view is on the issues in the Middle East, again, I don't think it's necessarily for our politicians to be commenting on. I think you're absolutely right. Whatever Parliament vote on a ceasefire will not impact what terrorist organisations do in the Middle East.
So let's just bring it back to home, and I have to be careful, we're in Purdah for Rochdale. And in fact, there's a really interesting article this morning in one of the news outlets saying, is Rochdale the most chaotic by-election ever?
Seems to be.
Well, it does seem to be. And obviously, I have to give due representation to all those candidates taking part in that. But you do have... It's wide open here. You've got Azhar Ali, who's basically no longer a Labour candidate, standing on the ballot paper with a Labour rose on it. Now, talk about misrepresentation. That can't be right. You've then got George Galloway in there. You've got Simon Danshuk, who used to be a Labour MP standing for Reform UK. This is going to be one to watch.
It's just depressing where, again, our politics is dominated by a war in the Middle East that we have no control over and no influence over. And it's sad, especially in an area like Rochdale, where been in the news so much recently for horrible reasons like grooming gangs, which are just completely brushed under the carpet and ignored again because of a war that, frankly, we're not going to have influence on, and no one in Rochdale's going to have influence on.
But even before that, I mean, we're talking about the Rochdale grooming gangs. The primary reason why they weren't investigated sooner is because of police fears that they would come across as Islamophobic.
Yeah.
So again, we've got to be very clear about this. The comments made by people like Lee Anderson, I think, are bordering on Islamophobic. I don't think they're very helpful. However, we've got to be able to investigate problems, no matter who they come from. And if you're a criminal, you're a criminal.
And I think the comments by Lee Anderson and Suella Braverman, it's important to take Islamism seriously and to do stuff seriously. These headline chasing, government by headline chasing, helps nobody and doesn't actually get to grips with the issue.
So what happens now with regards, and Renee and I were talking about this, we're approaching an election. It depends when we think that election is going to be. But Labour's position, and when you look at the latest poll, this is YouGov and the Times from the 21st of February, Labour on 46%. Both of us think that what happened may well change. I've said that lead is soft for a long time. Is it?
Who knows? I mean, I think everyone has been seeking to write Labour off, but it's not happened as yet. I think there is a fear among some people that Starmer's campaign could end up quite a lot like Theresa May's, where starting off a very significant poll and then crumbling under pressure, which could happen. I hope not. I hope it doesn't. But I think there is some fears that could happen.
What are your odds?
I think he's going to win the majority won't stay as significant as it is now. I'm going for a small Labour majority of around 20 seats.
Hung Parliament in our house yesterday.
Yeah, well, no, I think small majority or hung Parliament and sort of coalition with the Liberal Democrats potentially. I do think though within the Labour Party, I mean, look, in 2019 more than 80% of Muslims voted Labour. I think that Keir Starmer has realised very, very quickly that the Muslim vote can't be ignored, and that there are a handful of constituencies in which the Muslim vote is very important. We know that the Israel-Palestine issue is probably the most pertinent issue for that demographic. We also know that actually the way in which different candidates have been behaving around this, we know there's an anti-Semitism problem within the Labour Party. We know that Corbyn was criticised for it. Keir Starmer, I think, overcompensated the other way, and as soon as everything that has happened in the Middle East post-October 7th has happened, he immediately put his foot down and said that Israel has the right to defend itself, and now has realised the impact that will have on the Muslim vote.
Does Israel not have the right to defend itself?
No, they absolutely do.
Right.
But I'm saying that he said that immediately and has realised the impact that will have on the Muslim vote.
So he's going to flip-flop.
Lauren, where do you stand on that? Because obviously Israel does have the right to self-defence, but where do you stand in terms of actually then going in, as Netanyahu says he wants to do, 1.5 million people who are displaced?
From the river to the sea is what he said.
It is indeed. Now, clearly the international community is getting rather concerned.
They are, and I think... But the issue is Hamas started this war. Hamas didn't have to start this war.
But the people in Gaza didn't start it.
There was a ceasefire on October the 6th. Part of the reason this war was started because Israel was edging closer to normalisation with Saudi Arabia
Indeed.
and a wider strategic alignment with moderate Sunni Arab countries in the region. Hamas and one of Iran's proxies wanted to disrupt this. That's why you're seeing attacks going on Israel's northern border by Hezbollah, and you're seeing attacks by the Houthis. There's a bigger picture here, which I think yeah, it's a tragedy what's going on in Gaza. That's indisputable. But I think it was a tragedy started by the kidnap and the mass murder and rape of Israeli civilians on October the 7th.
But the end doesn't justify the means.
Says who?
And
Says me.
No, I'm sorry, but you cannot justify the horrendous humanitarian crisis that is occurring in Palestine as a result of Israel's response. Now, again, Hamas are a terrorist organisation. You cannot reason with the arguments around why.
So
they
then
did
Israel
October
stop
7th.
and Hamas attack them.
No,
No, I'm not.
no,
I'm
she's
never.
not
I'm
saying
not arguing
that.
for a ceasefire. What I am saying is that Israel's response was not proportionate, and it hasn't been proportionate.
And
for a long
so
time.
how does this play out then? Because obviously you've got Netanyahu's 4-point plan, then obviously Hamas's plan. Netanyahu has doubled down on it, I think, yesterday in terms of his plan. The US also backing off, not happy with what Netanyahu is doing. And I think rightly so. So what happens now?
But there is also a big rift between Netanyahu and his political
Indeed,
team
indeed.
with the Israeli military and the actual people who are running the war, who are much more, and the Defense Secretary Yoav Gallant, who had previously quit the government.
And why is that? Because Netanyahu has political capital.
Because he
in this.
is fighting for his political life. He
Exactly.
knows as soon as the war's over, he's toast politically.
Yeah.
I think everyone in Israel there's the reason why the former IDF chief of staffs in their political party have joined Netanyahu's cabinet, even though they're political rivals. They've joined him because they know this is an existential war for Israel, and the sort of wider strategic implications of that are something that they can't ignore.
And also, can I just add to that, sorry, within Israeli politics, there are huge numbers of factions that actually don't agree with Netanyahu's actions in Palestine, but also the actual political direction of Israel itself. I mean, even dating back to before the Israeli state was established, there were so many political factions fighting for their definition of Zionism.
So Israel have said to Hamas, you've got until the 10th of March
They
to
have.
give us back the hostages, or we will go into Rafah. So there's the solution.
I think
Again,
the pressure needs to be on the Qataris who are sponsoring Hamas, whose leadership live there, and they're supposedly a Western ally. Well, where's the pressure
Also,
then?
you cannot reason with terrorists. I'm sorry, but
So
they...
then what do they do then, Reem? What's the solution?
But then is the answer to go into Gaza when you've got 1.5 million people who are displaced? Because
what's
then
the solution?
But what do you do to those 1.5
so
million
you
people?
stop and you allow yourself to be attacked
No,
again
but
and
what is
again.
the solution? What, to kill 1.5 million people?
They have to get rid
Are
of
you
Hamas.
happy to kill 1.5
They
million
have
people?
to. They're not going to kill 1.5 million people, David.
How do you know that?
They're offering to move them out. Of course they're not. They
But where
have
to?
to get
These same
rid of
arguments were
Hamas.
made before Israel
Yes.
entered Gaza in a ground invasion and said, oh, you can't displace 2.2 million people, you can't do
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
Actually, they've now rescued some hostages, they've managed to extract and destroy these. What I want to know is, where are these NGOs who, they didn't notice a infrastructure project bigger than the London Underground going on underneath
That's a
them,
great point.
and suddenly nothing, they didn't
That's a
see
really good
anything.
point.